Okay. So I think we can begin the program.
Yes. Jackie madam, 1 minute. ഞാൻ പരിചയപ്പെട്ടിരിക്കട്ടെ Jackie madam. Yeah, madam. Myself, Dr. Pramila, Deputy Director, and our Regional Director, Senior Regional Director, Dr. Sindhupi Naya is here. I invite madam for her initial remarks, madam, and for
Thank you.
welcome speech.
Thank you very much for the same. As mentioned by my colleague, Dr. Pramila, Deputy Director at the Regional Center, Vadakara, this is a very happy occasion for us because we are organizing a webinar on a very important uh, program or a very important aspect that which is very ritually conducted in IGNO every year and in many institutions. We very recently had the International Women's Day, and on this occasion, IGNO as an institution which stands for the People's University has always been looking at providing democratic education to the people at large, and also a number of women have been empowering themselves through higher education through this institution. So it's a program of great meaning for us also at IGNO. So this time also we are conducting this program, and my colleague Dr. Pramila, Deputy Director, has taken efforts to organize this program on this occasion. And I'm very happy that we have a very eminent speaker for the day, Raki Raghavan Madam, to this for the program. We are indeed fortunate to have your presence with us here. And we also have our study center coordinators, esteemed faculty members from various institutions, and our dear students who are here in the program. And I see they are joining the program. So as they come in, we will let them in. But I think meanwhile, we can go ahead with this program. So it gives me great pleasure to have this program at the regional center. And as we all know, every year Women's Day comes with a theme. And this year also, the UN has brought out a theme for the International Women's Day, and it says right, justice, action for all women and girls. So whatever facet of women empowerment, it is always important to strive towards that, facilitate towards that. So I hope this program will be of great meaning for all our students who are in this forum. I thank Raki ma'am for your presence. A warm welcome to you and to my colleague Dr. Pramila for this great effort taken. Over to you, madam, please.
Thank you, madam. Respected Senior Regional Director of IGNO Regional Center, Vadagara, Dr. Sindhupi Naya, our most respected resource person, Dr. Jackie Raghavan, respected colleagues, and also the coordinators, dear students, good afternoon to all. This webinar on the topic Gender Justice is planned to celebrate the incredible strength, resilience, and achievement of women across the world. International Women's Day is a reminder of the efforts made in every field, such as in science, politics, art, or family life by women. It is also an opportunity to reflect on the work still needed to achieve true gender equality that we know, and we honor the women who have shaped the history and those who continue to inspire change. We are trying to create a world where every woman is empowered, valued, and uplifted. And here today, we are very fortunate to get the resource for the presence of Dr. Raki Raghavan, the Associate Professor and Head, Department of English, Paishiraja NSS College, as our resource person. And about Dr. Raki Raghavan, she is familiar to all teachers and students of Kannur University as the former syndicate member. Also, she is serving as the associate professor at Paishiraja College. She is now serving as governing body member, State Resource Center, Kerala. She is now working as the chairperson, Board of Examinations, Kannur University. Formerly, she had taken the charge as member, Board of Studies, Kannur University. About her educational qualification, she had completed her MA in English and MPhil in feminist reading of the work of Advik White. Her PhD is on the topic Canadian multiculturalism. One of the remarkable achievements of Dr. Raki Raghavan in the academic field is her service as the editor of the book titled Plural Perspectives, Readings on Gender, which is described as a textbook for UG students of Kannur University. Madam. We are really delighted to get you as our resource person on the occasion of the webinar on the topic gender justice. We welcome you to our webinar. Please, Madam, over to Madam, please. Jackie, Madam. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I won't be able to continue my video because of my internet issues. So with your permission, I will close my video and I hope it is okay. Sorry because we don't have power here in the college today, so I don't have internet access. So I will so with your permission, madam, I'm closing my video.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
thank you very much.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you very much for this very brief introduction, but very sweet. Uh, and I must say that I hope I am audible. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Madam. Yes, ma'am,
Hello.
audible, but
Right. Little more
yeah,
closer you can keep to the microphone, I think,
yeah.
na? It is
That
already
is better.
slightly faint.
Am I audible now?
Yeah. Now.
Yes.
Very
Okay.
much, Madam. Very much.
Okay. Okay. Now, I must say that I am indeed greatly honored by the fact that I get an opportunity to be part of an organization like IGNOU because way back, I was also a student of the IGNOU Center in Kannur, and I have my master's in philosophy from the Indira Gandhi National Open University. So way back in a few years back, as part of my academic enrichment, I was looking up to the pursuing courses on philosophy and politics, which is still in my bucket list. I couldn't complete it. So earlier as a student and now as a resource person, it is something a great honor, and I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity as of now. Now, as everyone has mentioned, both the Dr. Pramila and the coordinator, everybody has mentioned, uh, every year ritually this is being done as part of the International Women's Day celebrations. Because we know international days or weeks are perhaps occasion to educate the public in general on issues of such concern. And we get a chance by organizing such programs to mobilize political will. Because all these resources, all the resources of the country are to be mobilized through political will and to address global problems. All of us know it should reach the implementation level. So, more than an occasion to celebrate and reinforce the achievement of humanity or women in general, this is a moment that we are celebrating to emphasize the fact that women should not have rights ensured only as part of policy initiatives, which is on only on record or on paper, but implementation should be in such a way that women have real access to justice and equal opportunities. So, this is the topic on which I have been asked to speak on, that is gender justice. Now, we know every discussion on gender justice or gender sensitivity in education or higher education, particularly, it mostly lingers around claims for justice for girl students. So, this is what is to be interrogated or what is to be problematized because any discussion on gender uh, normally lingers around discussion on gender of, I mean, the community called women. So when you say gender justice, it is more than justice for women. It is justice for humanity in general. Because what gender is something that every student of IGNOU ought to know. Because simply defined, gender is the social, cultural, physical condition of being either male or female or any other gender. So, the interesting thing about gender is that we need to understand how the gender is performed or gender happens in everyday lives. Every day when you get out of your homes, every one of us, what do we do? First, the last thing that you do before we leave for college or before we go to work, what is the last thing that we do is, I believe, the last thing that we do is we look into a mirror. That is the last. We want to make sure that we look presentable, right? Now we want to see our reflection. But let me ask you a general question. Who exactly is looking at this reflection? Who exactly is seeing us? You want to leave your house with a face that is acceptable to society. You know that you are looking okay, but you want to make sure looking into the mirror that your face is presentable or acceptable to the society and the one that you are very mostly happy with. So the face that you are looking into the mirror and making sure that this is a face that is presentable to the society is not simply your face, but it is a social face. So you have a social face. So this illustrates the process through which society shapes or rather trains people to become social individuals. Now, social scientists have a term for this. They call this the process of socialization. So that is very important when you understand gender, because everybody must have heard about the very famous French feminist Simone de Beauvoir, who said that one is not born but rather becomes a woman. It is the society as a whole that produces this creature called woman. So one is not born into a particular gender. It is a gender that has been assigned to you by the society. So there is the becoming of a woman or becoming as or of a man. So every in every family, male children are forced to perform duties which the society consider uh, applicable or which conforms itself to the idea called masculinity. So in every household, a female child is asked to perform this the same way that society, the roles that society has assigned to the female. So every child is in one way or the other asked to grow up as a male or to grow up as a female. So the process of growing up is itself a social construct, because when we say sex is biological and gender is cultural, we have to interrogate further into the idea that sex is not simply biological in the current times. Sex itself is a social construct. So you want to prepare your female child for womanhood, you want to prepare your male child for manhood. So in schools, colleges, everywhere we have different kind of uniforms. We have different kinds of bags. We have different kinds of slippers. Everything. So you are also in the process of this socialization. So the task of every educator, I believe, is to try and change the way society socializes girls and boys or women and men. So the task of any educator is to counter this socialization process, which we call counter socialization. It is education that can only intervene in this cultural reproduction of roles that has been socially entrenched. So the task of every educator, I believe, should be to question this pervasive ideologies that say that this is the way women should behave or this is the way men should behave. And we never have earlier on, I mean, as students, as a student of higher education way back in the 80s or early 90s, I was a student of BA English Literature way back in the 90s. So I never had an opportunity to discuss on a gender identity called transgender. But later on, people started talking about the third gender. How did we get a chance to talk about all these? Because we were educated on this. So that is why I told you. It is only education, particularly higher education, which can intervene in this very questioning these pervasive ideologies. Now, when you talk about the history of International Women's Day, we understand that the International Women's Day celebration is connected with the women's labor struggles, the socialist movements, the campaigns for equal rights, etc., etc. Way back in 1857, when in the New York City in the United States in 1857, a group of young women, working class women, hello, uh, so it was way back in 1857 that women laborers, textile women workers in the United States, in the New York City, they started a strike that they protested against the poor working conditions in the factories they were working. They protested against the long working hours that they had to engage themselves in, and they also protested against the low wages. And what they demanded was better pay and a reduction in working hours. So this is the historical struggle that history has recorded, though not much of the details of this working class struggle has been recorded in history. This textile industry workers' liberation movement is a very important chronicle in the history of the symbol of women's labor resistance. So, beginning from 1857, then it moved on to 1908, when a large number of women in New York City started demanding better wages, and then the later on the demands started for voting rights, which is a very remarkable episode in the history of the liberation of women's liberation of women's, what do you call the so-called women's liberation movements. Now, what do all these protests highlight? So, all these protests highlight the connection between women's labor rights and political rights. First of all, a women's liberation movement or a female issue is ultimately, invariably enough, a political issue as well. So, way back in 1909 in Europe or in America, inspired by the labor movement, the Socialist Party organized the first National Women's Day. That was in 1909 in February, I remember. So that event was a remarkable event because it aimed at supporting women workers and the suffrage movement, that is for the voting rights. And then in 1910 and 1911, we have activists like Clara Zetkin, Teresa Malkiel, who came up with this idea of an international day for women. So it was Clara Zetkin who proposed this idea of an international day for women. And they put up this idea in the Socialist Women's Conference that happened in 1910 in Denmark. So Zetkin suggested a global day should be celebrated to promote women's rights and women's suffrage. A large number of people, delegates from various countries, supported the proposal unanimously. That was in 1910. And in 1911, the first International Women's Day was celebrated in a few countries like Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, etc., etc. And a large number of people participated, meetings, conferences, demonstrations, and the only aim was ultimately that there should be an equality in public life. That is, this year perhaps marked the beginning of a social mobility of women because a large number of women came to be part of this public life. And then way back, then later on in 1917, a large number of women got themselves organized in Russia. They started protesting against the ideological hegemonic influences during the World War. and then it triggered the Russian Revolution, and the Women's Day in Russia was celebrated so remarkably in the year 1917. And when did India begin to celebrate this International Women's Day? Maybe in the year 1975 or so, because the global recognition of the day by the United Nations got and recorded, and the International Women's Year was published in the year 1975. And the UN invited all countries to officially observe 8th March as a day for women's rights, and the term that UN then used was a day to observe not simply women's rights but also world peace, which is a very, very remarkable uh, term, I would say, because world peace can be initiated only by ensuring the fact that all citizens enjoy the rights of a citizen, regardless of the fact that whether they are male or female or transgender. So that is how International Women's Day began to be celebrated worldwide. And in Indian context, women's organizations, trade unions, social movements, every organizations put their hands together to celebrate this International Women's Day. And that is how in India, the celebration triggered strengthening the women's movement and feminist activism in India, especially in states like Kerala, Maharashtra, etc., etc. Now, coming back to how the idea of gender is propagated. Now, when you talk about gender, normally you talk about either male or female. Then you talk about how a male performs. Then you talk about how a female performs. Now, there is a very famous feminist thinker, Judith Butler. The students of English literature or political science, etc., or any other topic would have come across the name. Judith Butler comes up with this very idea of gender as performativity. Now, what does Judith Butler say when gender is something that is being performed? Uh, because gender is something that you perform. When you say gender is being performed in everyday act, because the way I walk, I make sure that I walk like a female. The way I dress, I make sure that I walk like a uh, female. And I want my male child. I have two children. The elder one is a boy, the younger one is a girl. And I make sure that my boy behaves like a boy. See, even after being part of this, even after being very, very, enlightened about the idea that gender is something that is being constructed, I never buy a skirt for my boy. I never buy a girl child which my boy child uses. See, so this process of socialization happens within a household. So every time I make sure that my boy grows up like a boy and my girl child grows up like a girl child. Now, what do you call this? This is a built environment that I create for my children. മലയാളത്തിൽ പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഒരു നിർമ്മിത പരിസരം. So there is a built environment wherein my children wants to be grown up as either a female or a male. ഒരു ഉദാഹരണമാണ്. Every time a non-housewife, every day morning the husband goes for work, children goes to either school or college, and somebody comes in between during 11 or 11:30. There is a calling bell. What is a normal housewife of a Kerala household? How does she react? I have heard a number of women in Kerala household saying, "Ivide ആരുമില്ല." That is how they respond. വരുന്ന ഒരാള് they will either be അത് പല പണപ്പിരിവിന് വരുന്നതായിരിക്കാം. ആരുമില്ല, നിങ്ങൾ പിന്നെ ഒരിക്കൽ വരൂ. ഇവിടെ ആരുമില്ല എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഉത്തരവാദപ്പെട്ട ആരും ഇവിടെ ഇല്ല എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. That is, there is no one entitled to talk to you or entitled to say yes or no to you. അത് അപ്പോഴും ആരായിരിക്കും? ദ ഹെഡ് ഓഫ് ദ ഫാമിലി, ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദി മെയിൽ. അപ്പൊ കേരളത്തിലെ സ്ത്രീകൾ തന്നെ ദേ ആർ മേക്കിംഗ് ഷുവർ ദറ്റ് ഐ ഹാവ് എ സെക്കൻഡറി പൊസിഷൻ. ഇത് കണ്ട് വളരുന്ന കുട്ടികൾ അതിനെ എങ്ങനെ കാണുമെന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കുക. അച്ഛനാണ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മെയിൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഫാമിലിയുടെ ഹെഡ് മെയിൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള പാർട്ട്ണറാണ് എന്ന് കുട്ടികൾക്ക് തോന്നുകയാണ്. This is very, very dangerous. See, even the way in which women speak. See, have you ever see? I have often wondered about the fact that പെൺകുട്ടികൾ തനിച്ച് ക്യാമ്പസുകളിൽ ഒറ്റയ്ക്ക് ലൈബ്രറിയിൽ പോകുന്നത് കാണുന്നത് വളരെ അപൂർവമാണ്. വളരെ അപൂർവമാണ് ക്യാൻറ്റീനിൽ തനിച്ചു പോകുന്നത്. They always want somebody to hold their hands. They cannot travel. See, we don't see much girls traveling, walking around in the campuses so freely. And when women begin to speak, they tend to use more question tags in their everybody conversations. Now, when you talk about how language is gendered, women tend to use more question tags. That is what I have always thought about. എപ്പോഴും അങ്ങനെയല്ലേ, ആണോ, തോന്നുന്നു. There is an element of uncertainty. Yes, they can't. Normally, women cannot take an assertive position. They are afraid of an intellectual acceptance. Now, how does this happen? This happens because gender is a performative act. That is what Judith Butler says. There is a stylized repetition of acts. So every time when this act is repeated throughout, the next generation comes to believe that this is the way I should perform. So don't think that boys are enjoying much happiness or much freedom in such situations. Boys are also sufferers of this gender constructs. Boys who have been taught, perhaps not through certain rules, but through certain unwritten rules, that they should be bold, they should be adventurous, they should not cry. അച്ഛനോ അമ്മയോ മരിച്ച ഒരു ആൺകുഞ്ഞും ഒരു പെൺകുഞ്ഞും, ഒരു ടീനേജർ ബോയ് ആൻഡ് ടീനേജർ ഗേൾ അലമുറയിട്ട് കരയുന്നു. ആൺകുട്ടിക്ക് കരയാൻ ഉള്ളൊരു സാഹചര്യം സമൂഹം കൊടുക്കുന്നില്ല. ദിസ് ഈസ് വെരി, വെരി ഡേഞ്ചറസ്. ബിക്കോസ് ഇതെങ്ങനെ വരുന്നു? ദിസ് സ്റ്റൈലൈസ്ഡ് റെപ്പറ്റേഷൻ ഓഫ് ആക്സിലൂടെയാണ് ആൺകുട്ടി ഇങ്ങനെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പെൺകുട്ടി ഇങ്ങനെ എന്ന് ഉള്ളൊരു വിവേചനം ഉണ്ടാവുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ a large number of advertisements, a large number of movies, the very idea of motherhood in movies. There is a very interesting article by a very famous Indian English writer, Shashi Deshpande. The article is titled "Learning to be a Mother." ഒരമ്മ എങ്ങനെ ആവണമെന്ന്. സാധാരണ മൂവീസിൽ അമ്മ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന മാതൃത്വം എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സങ്കല്പത്തെ നമ്മൾ ഒരുപാട് മിഥ്യാധാരണയിലൂടെയാണ് നമ്മുടെ കുട്ടികൾക്കൊക്കെ സിനിമകൾ കൊടുക്കുന്നത്. എങ്ങനെയാണ് മാതൃത്വത്തിന്റെ സങ്കല്പം? See, one fine morning you become a mother, and the society expects you to perform so. How does this happen? Motherhood is something that cannot be calibrated. Motherhood is something that you assign yourself into, you slot yourself into. അമ്മ എന്നാൽ എല്ലാ വികാരങ്ങൾക്ക് അതീതമായ എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ എല്ലാ ത്യാഗത്തിന്റെ ഒരു പരിവേഷമൊന്നുമല്ല. ഇത് മൂവീസ് കൊടുത്തതാണ്. There are a large number of movies in Kerala or in India perhaps, wherein the male child is asked to perform the duty of the sole breadwinner of the family. And the female child, the eternal sufferer. The mother is the eternal sufferer. Now we are living in the times of war. യുദ്ധങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു കാലത്ത് നമ്മൾ ഈ ഹിന്ദി സിനിമകള് യുദ്ധങ്ങളെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള സങ്കല്പം എന്തുമാത്രം കപടമായ ഒരു സങ്കല്പ ലോകത്തേക്കാണ് നമ്മളെ എത്തിച്ചത് എന്ന് നോക്കുക. Because the male child is asked to perform in the war, and the mother is someone who is a widow of an army man. Yes. And the mother is also someone who takes up the initiative to send her male children to the war. കുറേ സിനിമകളുണ്ട്. അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഹിന്ദി സിനിമകൾ ധാരാളം. ഈ അമിതാഭ് ബച്ചന്റെ ചില സിനിമകൾ, പിന്നെ അച്ഛന്റെ ലെഗസി പിന്തുടരേണ്ടത് ഞങ്ങളാണ് എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ഉത്തരവാദിത്തത്തിലേക്ക് and a large number of religious practices also confine the idea of womanhood or the idea of manhood. You see, religious practices പലപ്പോഴും, see, there is a very interesting uh, book by a very famous feminist activist called Vandana Sonalkar, which was published in the year 2022. We have heard about how much of issues religion has to do with your identity. നമ്മൾ മതവിശ്വാസി ആയിരിക്കുമ്പോഴും മതങ്ങളിലെ അപകടങ്ങളെ ചോദ്യം ചെയ്യാനുള്ള മനസ്സെങ്കിലും നമുക്ക് ഉണ്ടാവണം എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. Now we have all heard about a very famous book by Bertrand Russell, Why I Am Not a Christian. Now there is another very famous book by Kancha Ilaiah, the Dalit writer, Why I Am Not a Hindu. Even a more important textbook by the title Why I Am Not a Muslim, written by Ibn Barak. Now, if you are not a Muslim, if you are not a Christian, if you are not, why you are not a Hindu, etc., etc., is the question that all these thinkers are asking the religion that they belong to. They say that the religion that they were born into has a lot of inconsistencies, which they started questioning. But the question that Vandana Sonalkar, the feminist activist, asks is the problem with being a Hindu and the problem with being a Hindu woman, ഇത് രണ്ടും വളരെ വ്യത്യസ്തമാണെന്ന്. നമ്മളൊരു ഹിന്ദു ആയിരിക്കുക, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ക്രിസ്ത്യാനി ആയിരിക്കുക, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ബുദ്ധമത വിശ്വാസി ആയിരിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതിനേക്കാൾ ഡബ്ലി ജിയോപഡൈസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു അവസ്ഥയാണ് വെൻ യു ആർ ബീയിങ് പേഴ്സൺ who's born into the sex called female. ഹിന്ദു ആയിരിക്കുന്നതിനേക്കാൾ ഏറ്റവും അപകടകരമാണ് ഹിന്ദു സ്ത്രീ ആയിരിക്കുക. ക്രിസ്ത്യാനി ആയിരിക്കുന്നതിനേക്കാൾ ഏറ്റവും അപകടകരമാണ് ക്രിസ്ത്യൻ സ്ത്രീ ആയിരിക്കുക. വന്ദന സൊനാൽക്കറിന്റെ ഈ പുസ്തകത്തില് ഹിന്ദു സ്ത്രീ ആയിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന മതം എത്ര വലിയ സമ്മർദ്ദമാണ് ഒരു ഹിന്ദു സ്ത്രീയുടെ മുകളിൽ എന്നത് വളരെ വിശദമായി ചൂണ്ടിക്കാണിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഐ വാണ്ട് എവറി സ്റ്റുഡൻറ് ഓഫ് IGNOU to just have at least a cursory reading of such text, because every institutionalized practices, may it be family, may it be social institutions, may it be institutions like religion, everything have stood in the way of the liberation of women in one way or the other. Because now let us take what ഈ ജൂസിന്റെ മോർണിംഗ് പ്രേയേഴ്സ്. കാരണം ജൂതന്മാരെ കുറിച്ച് പറയുമ്പോൾ ലോകം കണ്ട ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ക്രൂരതയാണ് നാസി പട്ടാളം ജൂതന്മാരോട് ചെയ്തത്. ഹിറ്റ്ലറിന്റെ നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ ജൂതന്മാരി ആയിരിക്കുന്നവരെയൊക്കെ കൊന്നൊടുക്കി. പക്ഷെ ആ ജൂതന്മാരുടെ മതത്തിലെ അപകടത്തെ ആരാണ് ചൂണ്ടിക്കാണിച്ചത്? ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് തിങ്കേഴ്സ് ലൈക്ക് സിമോന ദെ ബൊവാ, ജൂഡിത്ത് ബട്ട്ലർ എക്സെട്ര. എന്താ ജൂതന്മാരുടെ മോർണിംഗ് പ്രേയേഴ്സ്? സാധാരണ പള്ളികളിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അമ്പലങ്ങളിൽ ഒക്കെയുള്ള പ്രാർത്ഥനയ്ക്ക് ഒരു ജനറൽ നേച്ചർ ഉണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ ജൂതന്മാരുടെ പ്രാർത്ഥന ഇങ്ങനെയാണ്: ആണുങ്ങൾക്ക് വേറെയാണ്, പെണ്ണുങ്ങൾക്ക് വേറെയാണ്. Now, what do men of the Jewish community, their prayer goes on like this: Blessed be the Lord, Lord of all worlds, that I be born a man and not a woman. That is how a man of the Jewish community is ought to pray. And what is the prayer of a Jewish woman? The Jewish woman prayer, it goes like this: Blessed be the Lord that I am born a woman according to his will. Whose will? The will of my male partner. എന്തുമാത്രം അപകടകരമായ ഒരു ചിന്തയാണ് വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളിൽ അല്ലെ പുതുതലമുറകളിൽ ഇത് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നതെന്ന് ആലോചിക്കുക. Now you take the case of great many thinkers whom we celebrate whenever you talk about philosophy. You take the case of Aristotle. Aristotle said a female is an incidental being. And what did Plato say? Now, Plato's morning prayers used to be like this. That is what history says. Plato would pray to the god saying that, I am blessed, dear Lord, that I am born a man and not a woman. I am blessed that you did not create me a woman. And what did Saint Thomas Aquinas say? A female is an imperfect male. And what did other philosophers like Bossuet say? What does Bible say? That Eve was created out of a Adam's supernumerary bone, which is utter rubbish when it comes to medical science, right? We know this is all myth, but how can somebody be created out of a supernumerary bone? So this is how the female, how religion has, as in one way or the other, stood in the way of the progress of women. ഈ സ്ത്രീകളെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സ്ത്രീ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന വിഭാഗത്തെ രണ്ടാം സെക്സ്, ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദ സെക്കൻഡ് സെക്സ്, രണ്ടാം ലിംഗ വിഭാഗമാക്കി മാറ്റാൻ മതങ്ങള്, സാമൂഹിക സംവിധാനങ്ങളൊക്കെ വലിയ പങ്ക് വഹിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. So this is what we should be asking, or we should be telling the newer generation, that there are a lot of inconsistencies in society, which is to be questioned in days like this. കാരണം ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ വിമൻസ് ഡേയിലെങ്കിലും നമ്മൾ പറയണം that the lot of ideological practices are to be questioned. അപ്പം I think I should be winding my top speech in a few minutes, because സമയം കുറച്ചധികം എടുത്തുപോയി. എങ്കിലും what can we do to ensure that women's days are celebrated with a concern for society? That the history of knowledge, we should understand that the history of knowledge has predominantly been male history. So in every campuses, students should have education on gender sensitization. All members of higher education institutions should undergo regular course or workshop or orientation program. Large number of transgender communities are to be incorporated into education, because in Kerala we have reservation for, in nationwide we have perhaps reservation for transgender community. In Kerala we have provision for students, from maternity leave for students, child care leave for students. Every constraint faced by women to make their career choices, even in spite of their education, everything should be raised. Now, relaxation for women candidates, for transgender candidates, everything should be taken up. A lot number of women and people from transgender community should come or take up administrative positions. നമ്മൾ ഇതൊക്കെ പറയുമ്പോഴും എത്ര സ്ത്രീകള് പിന്നെ ഡിസിഷൻ മേക്കിംഗ് ബോഡീസിലുണ്ട്. ഡിസിഷൻ മേക്കിംഗ് ബോഡീസിൽ സ്ത്രീകൾ അധികം വരാത്തതിന്റെ അപകടം എല്ലാ സംസ്ഥാനങ്ങളിലും ഉണ്ട് എന്നാണ്. അത് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഒരു കാര്യം കൂടി പറയേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. ഐ മിസ്ഡ് എ പോയിന്റ്. എ വെരി ഫേമസ് കൗൺസിൽ ഫോർ വിമൻ വിച്ച് വാസ് എസ്റ്റാബ്ലിഷ്ഡ് in India in the year 1958. It is known as the Durga Bhai Deshmukh Committee. She was the first chairperson of the National Council on Women's Education, which was established by the Government of India in 1958. And in 1959, the committee came up with a large number of recommendations, a few of which included that a Department of Women's Education should be constituted. The central government, state governments, every government should bring policy initiatives that could give priority to the education of girls. Co-education should be properly organized at higher level of education. ഇപ്പൊ ഈ കാലത്ത് അത് മെറ്റീരിയലൈസ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്ന കാലത്ത് ഒരു പക്ഷേ നമ്മൾ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു സുഖം അനുഭവിച്ചു പോകുന്നുണ്ട് എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. പക്ഷേ ഈ ഫ്രീ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ ഫോർ വിമൻ, ഫ്രീ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ ഫോർ ട്രാൻസ്ജെൻഡേഴ്സ്, അത് നമ്മൾ എത്രമാത്രം നമുക്ക് ഇംപ്ലിമെന്റേഷൻ ലെവലിൽ എത്തിക്കാൻ സാധിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട് എന്ന് നമ്മൾ അന്വേഷിക്കുക. കാരണം in Kerala, in the recent budget, the government has proclaimed that they would be offering free education for undergraduate students. So, which is a very, very welcome move. അപ്പോൾ ഭാവിയിൽ ഇത്തരം മൂവ്മെന്റ്സിന്റെ ഭാഗമായി, ഇത്തരം ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ ഡേയ്സിന്റെ ഭാഗമായുള്ള ടോക്കിലോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഡിസ്കഷൻസിലോ, let us put our hands together, let us join together to make sure that gender justice is ensured in every sphere of life. So that is how such international days, observance of such international days will be fruitful and remarkable for the building up of social security for humanity in general and women in particular. So with this, I conclude my small talk, and I thank the organizers for having given me an opportunity to speak to your students. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Madam, Simple, madam.
Yes, yes.
Madam is muted, madam.
കേൾക്കാം.
Yeah.
I think we had a very interesting and very enriching session from Raki ma'am. All said and done, as madam was rightly telling, I was also just thinking over it. As every customarily, every year we do the Women's Day, but it should translate into every form of action that we daily live, move around, carry ourselves, or the others in society. So it's very profound, madam, that your inputs or the points that you told has been very much enriching. And as you said, there's an occasion to remember, and also for how best each one of us can do towards that to empower other women, empower others around us, so that the overall aspect or the intended objective of Women's Day like this is upheld. We are very thankful, and I think it was very interesting for us to listen to your program, ma'am. Thank you very much. And over to you, madam, please. Pramila, ma'am.
Any doubts from our listeners, madam? You can conduct a small interactive session. Anybody can ask questions to Raki madam or any clearance is needed. Radhakrishnan sir, are you there? Or anybody? Let us wind up, madam. I think, madam, Raki madam, very interesting, madam, but also already told that it's very encouraging community and thoughts of which really it is touching also. Because it is a new information for me that is the prayer of news. And it is very shocking also. You cannot expect such a situation in the society. Totally depending on the men for all the things. And I think female and male are not equal, but they are complementary. And in such a society, cannot we want such a society, and in such a society, a child living, with a good personality. And also, we thank Dr. Jackie Madam for providing us a very enriched, knowledgeable, informative, and interesting session on gender justice. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Jackie ma'am. And also, I thank Dr.
Thank
Jackie
you.
Madam, the director, for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the wonderful program.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.